Diving Museum. Okay. Welcome to the History of Diving Museum. I'm here with Susie Youngberg, who is our community specialist, community outreach specialist, and we're in the research library. We'd like to thank you for joining us, let you know that we had a fabulous Women's Dive Day event in July. We got to live stream with Adele Luda and her team in the Jules Undersea Lab. It was real fascinating. They did some great experiments, and anyway, a lot of the visitors that came to the museum got to see it up on the screen and live stream. And actually, you'll see behind us, we have Aquarius and of course the Weiland's painting of Aquarius that he did with Fabian Cousteau, and that'll be in the research library through December 31st, along with our Diving and Pop Culture exhibit. So we look forward to next month's Immerse Yourself presentation, which will be Terrence Tinzel with NAUI, and he'll be talking about vintage diving, double hose regulators, what he does to refurbish them, and then some of the different events that we'll be having come up in the fall. We'd like to thank the Missu family. They have been longtime members and are sponsors of tonight's Immerse Yourself presentation. So thank you very much for Kristen and family, who happen to also live in Houston and like the Neutral Buoyancy Lab connection with our presentation this evening. So since we're on the topic of astronauts and aquanauts, would like to let you know that in the museum store, we've got this great postcard that has Neil Armstrong training before he went to the moon. And of course, different books for kids on aquanauts and what it's like to be underwater, preparing to be an astronaut. So tonight, we have Lauren Maples, who works at the Neutral Buoyancy Lab as a training specialist. She happened to come through the museum, and as people are checking in and we're talking to our visitors, we're finding out what she does when she's not on vacation, and got her contact information and invited her to be an Immerse Yourself presenter. So Emily, I'm going to hand it back to you. Welcome, and we say don't drive by, dive in.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, so as folks are coming in case you haven't done a presentation with us before, this is kind of how the rest of this evening will work. I am recording this, so if you aren't able to stay for the whole thing, or you're like, this is super cool, I want to share this later on. We will have this on our YouTube page as well, so you can access it through that. I'll have the YouTube link on our Facebook, and if you want me to email to you, I can do that as well. Just a little bit of housekeeping, just to keep things nice and smooth. I will ask that cameras remain off and you keep yourself muted. If you do not stay that way, I will politely do it for you. It's nothing personal. It just helps with the recording process, so no worries on that. If you have any questions, the way we are going to do this is you will send them to me in the chat feature, which can be accessed by, if you hover your mouse towards the bottom of your Zoom screen, there is a little chat button. You click on that and then it will send it to me. And so if it's pertinent to what Lauren is talking about, I will interject and I will then actually ask her the question during the presentation. If it's a general question you have for Lauren as the presentation goes on, we will answer all of those at the end. So don't worry about that. Use the chat feature though to send us the messages. That'll be the easiest way. And so without further ado, I am now going to get the PowerPoint started, and then you will be able to see Miss Lauren in the top screen. So give me 1 second to get this. All right. So you are good to go, Lauren, when you are ready. And as I get this opened from the beginning. Okay.
All right. Hi, guys. My name is Lauren Maples. I work at the Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory here in Houston, Texas, in Johnson Space Center. It is a NASA training facility that astronauts train underwater to simulate microgravity. They're training for spacewalks. And as a scuba diver there, I'm there to assist them through that training. I've been there since 2015, so in December will be 6 years for me. So I'm super excited. It's a really great place to be. It's a great place to dive. The visibility is absolutely perfect. Um, and it's just a really cool thing to be a part of, the whole NASA space program. It is really an opportunity that I can't believe I get to do it and that I get paid for it at the same time. So without further ado, I'm going to bring the MBL to you. I wish that all of you guys could be there at the MBL, maybe one day take a tour when we open back up to the public. But yeah, if you're ever in Houston, give me a shout and we'll get you to the MBL. Let's go ahead and start. Next slide.
Come on.
All right, so here is a view. It looks like glass. At the end of the day, when there's when the operations are done and there's no divers in the water, you can actually get this really cool picture, view of the pool. So the pool specifications, it's 102 feet wide, 202 feet long, 40 feet deep, and it holds 6.2 million gallons of water. It's a massive pool, but at the same time, it's so massive, we cannot put the entire space station all together in there. So it's kind of broken off into little pieces. So I'll go through some of those parts as we continue on. But one of the things to note that's really cool in the pool, we have a fully functioning robotic arm, which if you look, there's a cylinder, there's this long gray piece that's going the width of the pool. Yep, perfect. That is the robotic arm. It is known as the SSRMS, Space Station Remote Manipulator System. NASA loves its acronyms. But so this is one of 3 places that you can fly this, that it's operational. One is here in Houston in our pool. The other is in Canada because it is built by Canada and the Canadian Space Agency. And the third is space. So I guess there's only 2 on Earth and then 1 in space. But this is a training aid that they use for astronauts they use robotics to aid them in their spacewalks. So we have to have an interface of robotics here in this pool because basically what they're doing is walking through all the steps that they need to take to perform these spacewalks. So just a tidbit, there's a large variety of people here. So I'm going to try to speak to each of you individually, both the dive community, space nerds here with you, and everybody else who's listening in. So the space station itself is flying at 17,500 miles per hour. And with that, they experience a sunrise or a sunset every 45 minutes. So we have the capabilities, and there's other slides and other pictures that will show you the capabilities that we can actually turn the lights off to simulate these night passes, as they call them. But inside the pool, the space station itself has cylindrical parts, and those cylindrical parts hold pressure just like scuba tanks. And those cylinders will hold our pressurized vessels. So that's where actually the astronauts on the space station will live, where they eat, they sleep, they're in their laboratories, performing any kind of science experiments. That is any of those cylindrical pieces that you see in the pool, which is right next to that right next to the arm, there's other white pieces right there. Those would be the pressurized modules. And the other parts are on the exterior. Those hold different kind of, we call them space thingies. And ORU is an orbital replacement unit. And that's just a word for space thingy. It can be anything from a battery to a discharging unit. It can be anything. And so all of that is on the outside of the space station. And so what we train for in this facility is to go from inside the cylinder, the habitable part of the space station, go outside and work on whatever may have failed, what may have broken, what is just deteriorating due to time and space. So the space station has been orbiting for about 20 years now. And with that, there's things that break, there's things that need to be replaced. And there's some very challenging things that if they are broken, it could really damage the whole life support system of the space station. So that's what we're training for in this pool. Is we are training to go outside the vehicle. Spacewalks are also known as extravehicular activities, which is outside the vehicle. They're doing spacewalks to repair these whatever may have gone wrong with these batteries, with solar panels, new solar panels, upgrades, what have you. So that's sort of how we differentiate spacewalks from what's going outside, everything that's going outside into space. We have a sister facility that is on NASA proper, and it's called the SVMF, the Space Vehicle Mock-Up Facility. And that essentially looks just like our pool, but it's out of the water. And they're actually practicing everything intravehicular, so everything on the inside. So they're actually those cylinders that you see, those habitable parts. They have computer systems, and then they have the space toilet, which they have to learn how to use the bathroom in space, because that's a little bit challenging if you're not really sure, but it can be a little bit challenging. So this facility is for EVA, extravehicular activity, and there's another facility that they work inside the vehicle. All right, next slide. All right, so what's in the pool? Like I mentioned, we have a full-scale mock-up of some of the International Space Station. The pool is very large, but it's just not large enough to hold it all together at one time. So us as divers, we have we have different dive teams. We're all part of the same team, but there's sub-teams that configure the pool to make sure that those configurations or those mock-ups meet the needs, the requirements for that test. So this picture right here is actually near and dear to me. We have been working, so like I mentioned, I've been there for going on 6 years now. And for the entire time of my employment, we've been working the space station upgrades. And so that includes the batteries. So not what you see here in this forefront, but if you actually look down, there's a hose that's connected on these gray panels, these gray boxes that are around there. If you want to point to those with the mouse, that would be really cool. But they're gray little panels if you go forward up to the screen, up, yep, right there. These gray panels, we've actually been replacing these batteries. So these are, the space station had nickel hydrogen batteries, and they are deteriorating. They don't hold as much battery power over time. So basically the space station harnesses its energy from the sun, and that energy gets disseminated out through the space station. It's stored or it's utilized real time. So these batteries utilize as battery storage. The nickel hydrogen batteries were deteriorating. They weren't going to give us the longevity that we needed to move forward. So they moved them, or they upgraded them to lithium ion batteries. So for my entire existence at the NVL, we've been training these lithium ion battery changes. The space station has four power channels, and that's where all these things are housed, all these batteries. So it's taken the length of time of spacewalks, about 5-year training, and then to completion 5 years to get completed. They actually just finished, I think in January, if I'm not mistaken, was the last battery upgrade before we moved to the solar panels, which I'll get to in just a second. So basically, these runs, these training runs that these astronauts do, it takes a lot of work, and it's practice. It's just like practicing an instrument, or just like learning to dive, or practicing your skills, mask removal, regulator replacement, all of those skills that you do over and over and over again to get perfected. It's the same with these procedures. So basically they have people who will write procedures for the astronauts to change out these batteries, or do whatever it is that they need to upgrade or fix on the space station. So they write these procedures, and then they come in the pool to test that those procedures will work. And they will train and train and train and train until they get it perfected. Once they get it perfected, then they'll fly the crew to space and perform those EVAs. So recently we had the all-female, well, I say recently, it was a couple of years ago, actually, maybe 2 years. 2 years ago, we had an all-female spacewalk that was performed, and that was one of their tasks, was to do battery upgrades. So that's something that's really cool, that that I worked with that crew, and all the crew that have performed the EDAs in the last 6 years. It's been an honor to be a part of that team to help them through that. And this last piece that we've done this past year of the pandemic, we've been up and running, and we've sent at least 4 missions that I can think of on the top of my head to and from space. So it's been quite a busy year for us at the NBL. But this piece, that's white piece that's got the holes in it, that's going the width of the pool there. Yep, right there. That is the IROSA, the ISS rollout solar array. So the ISS is getting 6 new solar panels that we've been training these crew to get installed. So we've just recently, maybe back on Father's Day, we had an EVA, a spacewalk that was performed to install one of those. And they actually had some challenges, some things that didn't quite go right with the hardware, and things that came up that didn't come up during their training session. And so we were actually on call in case something didn't quite work out and they needed to get crew into the NBL and train through new procedures. So luckily they were able to get it squared away and installed perfectly, and now we have one of the 6 new solar arrays on the International Space Station. So we support real-time flight. We have the ability to come in, and if you've ever seen Apollo 13, when the CO2 scrubber goes wrong, and so they're like, no, they lock themselves in the room and they try to figure out how to fix the problem with whatever tools they have on board, the Apollo capsule to fix that CO2 scrubber. We have the capability to do that here in the pool as well. So if it came down to it and we had to get crews in the pool to work through those procedures, we certainly could do that, and we support that real time. Next slide. Awesome. So this is probably, well, there's a lot of pictures that you'll see here, but this is on Egress Day, which I'll explain a little bit more about what Egress is. But as I mentioned, the NBL is utilized for training EVAs or spacewalks. We simulate microgravity by offsetting these suits to make them to where they're neutral, and that we use foam and lead weights. The suits are pressurized, so with all of that, we're keeping them neutral in the water column. And so for those who aren't in the diving world, that's making sure that they don't float to the surface and they don't sink to the bottom, that they're kind of stuck there in the middle. And at that, when they're stuck there in the middle, it feels like microgravity, or it feels like they're floating in space. So that's the whole goal of what we're trying to achieve as their safety divers. So per astronaut, there are 2 safety divers, which you see to the left or right of each astronaut there. There's 2 safety divers, 1 camera diver who will follow the crew around with the camera so that they can get real-time footage of what's going on. And we have a mock mission control room that's in our facility that they're the ones who write the procedures will sit at. And they're viewing everything through the camera lens that the diver holds. There's other cameras around the pool, but they're basically getting the close-up shots and what the astronaut is doing at that time. So 2 safety divers, 1 float diver, and 1 utility diver. And that utility diver is responsible for the tools. If you see these silver things that these astronauts are actually standing in, those are APFRs, which are articulating portable foot restraints. And so basically it's just a foothold for them to actually have some stabilization and be locked into one place rather than free floating about. So some of these tools, a majority of these tools are really heavy. So we have volumetric tools that the astronauts will move around. If they're holding something heavy, for those of you who aren't in the diving world, since they're neutral in that position, we make them neutral, so they're sort of just kind of floating there, hovering there in the water column. If they were to take something that was 1 pound or 2 pounds and they hold it in their hand like this, they're actually going to start sinking. So the tools that they have attached to them to simulate their mini workstation, or how they would have, it's basically their astronaut tool belt. They're volumetrics and that are neutrally buoyant, so it won't make them float or make them sink to the surface or to the floor in the event that they're holding it. So those utility divers will aid them and swap out those volumetric tools for functioning high fidelity tools. So here you can see this is actually, I say astronaut, but these are actually two of our divers in the spacesuit. We have the ability as divers to get into the spacesuit, and one, it teaches us patience, because it's actually not that easy to work in. And you, if you already didn't think, the world of astronauts, you absolutely think the world of them once they're worked, 8 hours, or excuse me, 6 hours in that suit. So it's really a cool thing to experience, to be a diver and to get in that suit, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. But on the technical side, or what the divers do, so we have the training run in the pool is 6 hours long. We have three shifts of divers, and each shift dives about 2 hours. So the first shift and third shift are actually the same personnel, with the second shift that relieves us for lunch and to take a warm shower. The pool itself is 86 degrees, so it's not that bad, but at an hour and 50 minutes, it starts to get pretty cold. But you can look at our gear here. We've got twin 80s. We're breathing nitrox, 46% oxygen blend. This allows us to have a little bit longer bottom time, and this allows us to have this bottom time and to not really worry about having any issues, diving maladies at that point. The astronauts are also, we talked about their suits are being pressurized. They're pressurized with the same 46% oxygen blend that we have. And they don't get relieved. They're down there for that entire 6 hours. We're the ones rotate. And we rotate, basically, we could.
Oh, are
technically
you?
Stay down for that long if we wanted to, because the.
Oh, Lauren, you're breaking up a smidgen.
Oh no.
Could you backtrack could you backtrack like 30 seconds?
Yes. 30 seconds ago. Okay.
You were saying that they're breathing the same thing, but obviously they don't get a reprieve.
Right. No, they don't get a reprieve at all. So they typically will eat, smoothies or something like that to kind of keep them full for the day. But yeah, so they don't get a reprieve. We have the ability to get out of the water. We are exposed to the elements, so we are, thermal. Also food too is important, but to keep our mental state and to keep our thermal abilities, back up and running, they allow us to have about an hour and a half out of the water before we get back in. So that's kind of nice. It gives us time to take a warm shower, eat something, grab a cup of coffee, and then after that, it's about time to get back in. So that's kind of our day as divers. We get there in the morning. We have a dive brief as all dives begin. We have a dive brief, and the test conductor, who is the one that has written these procedures for the astronauts, the test conductor goes over everything that they're going to be doing for that day, what tools to expect, the requirements for if they want specific camera angles for the float diver who has the camera, the video camera to capture. We also have like still photos, so if we need to take any kind of real-time data for crews on the International Space Station, we have that as well. Part of my job today, I was a float diver, so we call them float because basically they're not doing anything, they're just floating there and swimming around, but they're the video camera diver. And that role, even though you're just kind of floating around, not really doing anything, is really important because they have the ability to send that video that you recorded out to all the NASA centers throughout the US, to headquarters, to even to the International Space Station. If we were, recording real-time procedures that they need to follow, they would they would beam up that footage that I recorded, or whoever the float diver was for the day. They would beam that up and they would review that footage. So, all roles in the water are really important. So basically in the training flow of how it goes is sort of your first beginning steps as a diver in the MBL. You're running cranes, you're doing a lot of things topside, which in the world of, commercial diving, I guess you would call that a tender. We don't really have umbilicals, but you would call that, tending to whatever needs are on the top side. From there, when you get in the water, you're doing the float cameras. So your first steps as a diver is in the MBL is, following everybody around with that camera. Then you move on to safety diver. And the last position in the water is utility / reconfiguration diver. And those are the ones who are responsible for the tools and making sure that the pool is configured the way that it needs to be per the requirements of the test. So it's really a really cool thing to be a part of. And it can be, your schedule can change at any time. So if you are scheduled to be a utility diver that morning, you could have been changed to be a safety diver. And so you have to be pretty on your toes at all times. But all of our procedures are written as, safety is paramount. So everything that we do revolves around safety, the safety of ourselves, and the safety of our crew members, the astronauts. All right, next slide. Let's see what's next.
I do have 2 quick questions.
Sure.
2, oh, actually 3. So 2 are about this slide. Did you say 46 or 26% nitrox?
46.
46, okay.
46%.
And then along with that, do the astronauts maintain 46% O2 nitrox in space as well?
They maintain 100% of oxygen in space.
Okay, perfect. And here's another one. Are the astronauts tethered or do they have rebreathers?
That is a good question. I was actually going to get to that. So that was a perfect segue.
We'll come back to that. And then John did have a question about the solar panels. He was wondering, what are some of the challenges to the solar panel replacement? How were they handled at the NBL?
So some of the challenges that they found were real time. So these were like in a series. So there was, they went out on a Thursday and did an EVA, and then there was another one on Sunday. So they actually had some complications on the Thursday EVA, which kind of set their timeline back a little bit. So basically, it was something regarding the hardware, and we actually had trained this the day before the spacewalk. So the question came about by the people writing of training procedures. The question was, what if we can't get the solar panel installed? What do we do? And so the day before, we actually practiced tying down the IROSA, tying down that long white structure that you guys saw, tying that down to the exterior and basically with a ratchet strap. They call it a long duration tie down tether, is the name of the tool, but it's basically a ratchet strap. And so they practiced, okay, if we had to do this, can we ratchet strap it and feel safe about leaving the hardware out there? So we practiced that, and that was a contingency. But it turned out that the bolt didn't quite engage the way that they wanted it to, from my understanding, on the EVA. And so they did some finagling, and they talked with the engineers and the science community of this solar array, and eventually got the procedure to work somehow. And I don't know all the details about that. The final one that was done on Father's Day, and we were on call, but I was spending time with my stepdad and my grandparents. But yeah, so that ultimately came down to, they just kind of worked the procedure until it kind of fit in the way that it needed to. And they was successful. I chimed in about the time where I knew they were going to be rolling out the solar panel. So I was able to, and me and my department, I work in the training department at the NBL. And so we had a text message going on between our group of, hey, they're about to roll it out, let's view in. And so we chimed in and saw that it was successful. So that was really neat to be able to see that. But we were on call that day, and it was a nail biter for sure. Good question. Anything else?
I think we're good on questions for now.
Okay, so the question, I'll go back to the question about the umbilical. So in space, the suit is sort of self-contained. It works, it has a CO2 scrubber in it. It's got their oxygen bottles that they're running off of. It's got a battery. It's got its communications. It's got water coolant, which I'll go over in just a few minutes, what all that means. But basically, it's self-contained. Here in the pool, we utilize umbilicals. So just like hat diving, it's no different. It's just surface supplied, that's all that it is. So if you notice in this picture right here, the one on the left, you'll see the white and red cables that are hanging down from the bottom of the suit. Yep, right there. Those are the umbilicals. So they run on umbilicals here in the pool, and that's just because batteries and water don't quite align that well. So we have all of our umbilicals. It has their power, their power, pressure. It's got their water coolant, which I'll go over, and it's got their communications and such. So all of that is housed inside the umbilical. That is their lifeline. And so part of our job as a safety diver they're not tending their own umbilical. It's not like hat diving in that regard. But we are tending that umbilical, and it's on us to make sure that nothing falls on it, it doesn't get wrapped around anything. That is the lifeline to the astronaut. And that is, aside from making sure that they're safe, that is our secondary, that is our, you keep your eyes on both kind of thing, making sure that, and making sure that nothing happens to it. So usually one diver will be focused on the astronaut, tending to whatever it is that they need. And then the other divers sort of, got their hands, tight on the umbilical, making sure it's, safe and deconflicted from whatever may be around. That the space station, the SSRMS, that robotic arm that I was telling you about earlier, that thing kind of sneaks up on you, and they fly it around. We have our own robotics team. They are part of the dive team, but they are their secondary job is the robotics team as well. And so they will fly it around sometimes. And when let's say you go under structure and they're working procedures, then you come out from underneath and all of a sudden there's, like the SSRMS is just hanging out right next to you. And you're like, oh man, I didn't even see it there. So when that happens, we have to be extra cautious of that umbilical and its locations and, all of our safety things. If anything goes wrong, let's say the spacesuit has a leak or it malfunctions, we have to determine, make sure that we have the umbilical deconflicted such that we can get them, out from depth up to the surface within a reasonable time, not exceeding the ascent rate or anything like that, but that we have the straightest path to their safety. So that's one of our main jobs as safety divers, is ensuring that safety. So that was a good question, whoever asked that about the umbilicals and self-contained. Good question. All right, so I discussed the a little bit about egress day. So safety divers, the safety diver program, the training of it takes about 6 to 8 months before you're working autonomously without a trainer. So as part of your last hurrah, or I guess not last hurrah, but once you finish, so we have exams. We have to take exams after each step of our training. We take exams. And then we also have an oral board. So we sit in front of a panel of our training department, of NASA personnel, whoever is involved in writing our procedures for our safety divers and all these things. Our bosses, they are sitting in this panel and they're basically just firing away questions at you regarding safety, regarding procedures, protocols, ascent rates. What do you do if this happens? What do you do if this happens? And so basically, they're just firing questions at you to make sure that you know everything there is to know about getting this astronaut to safety, and should any scenario arise. So we go through this, and we all, as part of a dive team, I'm sure if you all have your own dive teams, every milestone that you achieve, your dive team, they take you out, you have a good time. And so with that, we also get an opportunity to get into the spacesuit for the first time and kind of learn what it feels like to be in that suit. So this was my first time in the spacesuit. This was, I think, 2016, if I'm not mistaken. So this is my first time in the spacesuit, and I'm just going to explain a couple of parts of the spacesuit because that's really it's really neat to learn about. So if you look at the picture on the left, you see, well, that's me, but you see these yellow tubes that are kind of coming off of my shoulders. And so this whole garment is called the Liquid Cooling and Ventilation Garment, LCVG. And basically, it is a onesie, a long john. You can also see the person off to the side. They're wearing the same thing in the top left corner of that picture as well. But it's a onesie that has a series of tubes in it. And these tubes are hooked up to a hard water line inside that umbilical that will actually feed cold water around those tubes, which is all throughout your body while you're in that spacesuit. So there's no AC. You are getting airflow, but your airflow is kind of warm. It's not great. It's AC in your car. It's your breathable air, but it's hot. It's kind of hot. And your sweat rates as well. So as you start, your face gets red, you get hot. So in order to keep that down, they have these cooling, the liquid cooling garments, and that's what helps sort of regulate the temperature of the crew member. And the yellow tubes that I was talking about, that is the ventilation part. So it's liquid cooling and ventilation garments. So that is what will ventilate, as you exhale, you inhale and you exhale your CO2, that is what will ventilate it down and out into out of the suit. Or here in this case, it would also be to scrub it. In the real spacesuit, it has a CO2 scrubber. So here in the pool, it will be vented out on the other side of the umbilical. But yeah, so that's basically it. So that's a liquid cooling and ventilation garment. The spacesuit itself, unpressurized, weighs about 300 pounds. So the pants are really heavy and the top is very heavy. So you have this whole team of suit engineers and suit technicians that actually help you get suited up into this spacesuit. From what I hear and from what I see on the International Space Station, it's much easier to get in this spacesuit because you kind of just float up into it. Here on Earth, it's a little challenging. So there is the lower torso assembly, the LTA, which are the suits, or excuse me, which are the pants of the suit. Then you have the hard upper torso, or the hut, which is the top shirt, the shirt of the suit. And it's hard upper torso, it's hard because it's protecting your vital organs. I mentioned in space, you're moving at 17,500 miles per hour on the International Space Station, and so is everything moving around you. So even if you have just a little pebble hit you at that speed, it is much like a bullet hitting you. So with that, you have to make sure that your organs are protected, your vital organs are protected. So it's made robustly to ensure that if something were to hit you, that you're not going to be impaled or anything like that. So those are the two parts. The suit is actually modular, so each of those parts can come off and they're interchangeable, which is important because if there's a part that's damaged on the International Space Station, let's say the lower left arm of the suit is damaged, they can change it out with another one and continue operations. So it was made modular by design so that, to have sort of a redundancy aspect to it. So you can see me there. I've got my pants on. I'm crawling up into the hard upper torso of the suit. The suit is designed not for petite people. So what I mean by that is it's easy for you to get in, but it's harder for you to work in. If you have more broad shoulders, it's harder for you to get in, but easier for you to work in. So it's kind of a catch-22 is, oh yeah, I can get in there easily, but I'm a little bit on the shorter side and I don't quite have the leverage to operate the suit as best as possible. So I think that if in the future, if I ever became an astronaut, it would have to be like a suit that was more suitable for more petite people. But at any regard, I will get in the suit every time, even if I'm not that great at it. All right, next slide. So these are the leg weights. If you look at the picture on the left, you see the divers. We also work as, we run the cranes, we do other things. So these are part of the dive team's members who are running the cranes for that day. But they are suiting me up with my leg packs, and those have the lead weights inside of them. And so they're putting those on me before I get into the water so that I don't go floating off or anything. So I am attached to this donning stand that's attached to a crane. And that's how I'll actually get lowered into the pool is the crane operator will lift me up, turn me out, and then over into the pool. And then I'll start my day. So on my chest, though, you can see another weight pack on the chest. And behind that weight pack is a volumetric for the DCM, the display and control module. And that works just like your dashboard on your car. So remember I talked about how we have umbilicals in the pool, but in space they don't. In space it's all self-contained, it all works itself. So that display and control module gives them all of their readings that they need to know as far as their pressure in the suit, the water coolant that they have, their gas flow, their communications. All of that information is going to be displayed on their display and control module here, because they don't have any use for that because we're controlling that all via the umbilicals. We utilize it as a volumetric. So what we do that is we can actually utilize it to help to aid in their way outs. And that's what we call when we put them into their neutral buoyancy, we call it a way out. And so we can utilize that to our advantage. So we can make it a negative, so it can be like 20 pounds or 10 pounds, however much they need on their chest to make sure that they get down. Or if they need it positive, we have some that are positive 4 pounds or positive 7 pounds, which has like a lot of foam around it. So we utilize, even though it doesn't function the way that it should as a display and control module, as divers in the MBL, we can utilize that to help them with that way out. And when we say neutrally buoyant, we want to make sure that we're neutral in all orientations. So if we put them on their stomach, that they're going to lay flat and not go heads down or not drop their feet, that they lay flat parallel with the pool floor. We can put them on their back, the same side and upright. And when we go upright, we kind of want them to be in sort of like almost a 45-degree angle, because that lets their arms get into their work envelope. The spacesuit has bearings that right here at the shoulders, which makes it challenging for them to reach further. Let me back up here a little bit so you can see that. Makes them challenging to reach further in this direction. You almost have to think robotically. So in order to reach up here, you have to bring your arm back and over to get there versus just reaching up. So because of that, we put them in this 45-degree angle to kind of help their arms stay in the work site a little bit. On the right here, you guys know as divers, Valsalva, you have to be able to equalize your ears. In a spacesuit, you can't really touch your face to be able to do that. So we have a Valsalva device, or it's basically just a foam nose block. If you've ever been on a full face mask, they have nose blocks inside of there as well. But basically we have a nose block in here that we can kind of wiggle our nose up to and be able to press on it to equalize our ears. So they pressurize us on the pool deck. And, we're, even as the astronaut in the suit, I'm not an astronaut, but even as the subject in the suit, you'll give dive signals because you're talking to all divers in the water. So I'm basically, as I'm being pressurized, I'm letting them know that I'm okay, that my ears are okay, and I'm equalizing just fine. So from there, after we get pressurized, we'll be, getting ready to put on my tools here in a minute. So we can go to the next slide. All right, so I've got my tools on, I'm pressurized, and I'm ready to go. The picture on the left, this is a good buddy of mine, Mitch. He used to be a diver at the MBL, and he was actually the photographer taking the pictures for the day. He's since moved on to bigger and better things, but he was really helping me out, helping with bringing my family around that day. So I'm ready, I got my tools on, good to go. And once I got my tools on, they asked me if I'm gonna be, if my suit feels okay, if I'm ready to start my day. And of course I agree and I say, yes, let's go. And so they pick up the crane, they lower me into the water, and you can see the safety divers there waiting for my arrival. Next slide. All right, so we do an initial way out. So once we get down there, we go through comm checks, make sure that everybody can hear. In the pool, they have speakers underwater. There's I don't even know how many, but there's speakers all around, and you can hear them just about as loud as you hear your car stereo. So you can hear all audio from the astronauts talking to the test conductors relaying their procedures to them, to the test director who is on our side of the house, who makes sure that the whole test, the test as a whole is operating properly and safely. So you can hear everybody talking underwater. So they go through comm checks, make sure everybody's good to go, that everybody can hear. And then we start our day with an initial weigh out. So the initial weigh out is just to make sure that one diver can basically control that subject if they need to. So we do have a descent line that we will be, the subjects will take themselves, the divers will swim the subjects over to the descent line, and the subjects will descend down the descent line. But what we want to make sure is that one diver can control the subject in the event that the other diver has a problem with ears or something like that, they're not going to be screaming down to the bottom or not able to even go down because they're so buoyant. So we do an initial weigh out to make sure that the subject is good. It has a good enough weigh out to stay upright, because as you know, if you're on your side or you're on your head or something like that, it's a little bit harder to clear your ears. So you want to make sure that the subject has the best possible position to be able to equalize as they go down the descent line. Next slide. And there's me, just as happy as can be. So they just finished my way out. This was probably the moment where I was like, oh, this is so cool. And probably about 10 minutes later, I realized this is a lot of work. But I really like this first picture because it makes me realize how much I went through in terms of this training. It's very strenuous training to get to the point where you can actually be in the suit, and NASA trusts you enough to wear their hardware. So this is a really cool opportunity. This is the first picture they took that I noticed and I actually looked at the camera when they got me down there. So it's a really cool experience. Next slide. All right, enough about me, sorry. We are in some really cool times at the MBL, and in general, but at the MBL too. So I mentioned earlier we're working with our lights to be able to simulate the night passes when they're orbiting the Earth. But we're also trying to simulate is lunar environments, how dark it can be on the moon versus what it looks like when the sun or when the Earth rises, and you can see that from the surface of the moon. So we're working with lighting and kind of going back to learning from the Apollo days of how to train for the moon underwater. So this is one of our steps. We are diving some Kirby Morgans here. So this is a new addition to the MBL diving hats. It's super fun. Our dive team is made of divers from all various backgrounds: Navy, commercial, hat, whatever you can, recreational. So for the Navy guys and the commercial guys, they are really super excited about this, and they're able to offer a lot of input from their industries to get us to this training. It's really neat. So yeah, we're turning the lights off in the MBL, and you guys saw the pool. There's structures everywhere, so we have little dive lights on our BCs and in case of emergencies and stuff like that. So it's really cool. It's probably the first night dive that I was like, okay, nothing's gonna eat me, we're good. But it's really cool to be down there and experience this stuff. Next slide. So there's another picture. You can show they did stages of darkness. So you went like super dark, or like 25%, 50%, 75%, and completely dark. And so this is completely dark. And they had just have sort of
Lauren, you
little dive lights
up.
on their little. So they're.
Oh, could you backtrack a second? You froze up.
Oh yeah. Technology, gotta love it.
I know.
So we are practicing. This is 100% lights out in the MBL. So they have lights on them, trying to simulate like a nighttime on the moon. So they've got tools that they're trying to work. You can see this like in the forefront of this picture. There's a little cart. This little buggy has different kind of coring sample tools, and then you can see this rock to the left of it. And they're going to take, coring samples from that and kind of grind down some of that to practice what they're going to do on the moon and sort of rock sample collections and, basalt rock and all this stuff. So it's really neat to be a part of and to watch it all. Yeah, you're working, but you're also like, holy cow, this is really awesome. Like it's it's really neat to see for sure. Next slide. All right, and here's the daytime. Well, it's bright. So here's the daytime. So we have a sand pit in the MBL that we have been testing several different sands, hydrophobic sands, to be able to pick up with shovels and make it seem like sand, but that it's not going to like hold a bunch of water. And so they can actually take these sand samples and put them in collection bags and things like that. So, you know, we've had all this sand. Part of my job for a while was, you know, they would crane in bags of sand and I would just cut them open and just let all the sand rain down. It was really fun, but a lot of work at that. So we're practicing with their tools and collecting some of these samples. The suit on the right is actually the new suit that NASA is testing. It's called the XEMU, the Exploration EVA. There are acronyms inside of acronyms. So it's the Exploration Spacesuit. So this spacesuit is designed to go onto the lunar surface. So now at this point we're not neutral. Well, yeah, we're not neutral buoyancy lab. We're at this point we are 1/6 buoyancy lab. So on the moon you're 1/6. It's got 1/6 of Earth's gravity. So
Oh, shoot, we lost you again, Lauren.
the way if you've seen the lunar landings and they're kind of sort of, you know,
Oh,
no.
Can you,
I'm back.
you were just saying that it's 1/6 the buoyancy of Earth.
Yes. So 1/6. So
Oh no, we lost it again. Can you hear me? Are you there, Lauren?
but just buoyant enough can have that little hop.
Oh,
the
I keep
lunar
losing you.
Oh no.
That's Don't worry, believe me, this isn't that terrible. All right.
I know, right? Okay.
So 1/6 buoyancy, or the now I'm getting even mixed up. So we were at the 1/6 and it kept cutting off.
Okay, I'll go fast. Okay. 1/6 of the Earth's gravity. So we make sure that we can have them sort of still standing on the pool floor, but able to sort of kind of hang when they jump from, you know, or walk, that they have a little bit of a bounce to them. So this is one of the new suits that NASA's building and we're testing. We actually have a test tomorrow, not on Lunar, but they're attempting to. They want this suit to get space time, so they want to send it to the ISS. So we're going to be practicing with this. We're going to be having a testing run tomorrow with this same suit, but weighing it out such that it's in the microgravity environment. So they're first going to test it there. So we'll actually be seeing this suit tomorrow, which is really exciting.
Oh, no.
Next slide.
Come on. There we go.
All right, so there's me sitting on the surface of the moon with my scuba tanks. I just want to point out, this flag had a lot of science behind. We tried to simulate, you know, obviously the Apollo missions where they, you know, erected the flag and on the moon, but it's water, and so we had to, you know, figure out how to make it buoyant and float up. So you can't see it, or you might be able to see it, but at the top of the flag on the right, or I guess top of it to the right corner, there's a foam block right there that's actually holding it up. But there's a lot of diver effort to try to figure out how to make this float in the pool and not make it look so like that it actually had foam attached to it. So it was really fun trying to figure out. So yeah, so in the pool, this is our little lunar. You can see, you know, divers kind of hanging around there. At this point, it's kind of hard to keep up with them because they now are in control of themselves. They can run wherever they want to at this point when they're on the pool floor. So we have to, you know, swim a little bit quicker to keep up with them. But you can see the float divers. I discussed the camera divers. They're off in the right corners there. So you know, they're following around looking, watching the camera, watching the crew, but then getting that footage for the test conductors. So it's really, really interesting things that are going on, new things. And then of course, the ISS is they're working so hard. Right now they've got.
Oh, you cut out again. You there, Lauren?
Crew 2 up there. They're going to be launching. Yep, I'm here.
Oh, it cut out again. You were just saying what they're working on the ISS.
Yeah, they've got crews up there working on science and different different tests in the lab that they have there. So they're really busy, and we're really busy at the MBL, and it's really fun. It's a fun busy. It's a good busy. But yeah, I think that's all I have on this presentation, I think. But I'm ready to take questions if you guys have them.
All right, so let me come back and we'll do a bigger screen. There we
Where's my
go.
space station?
I know, there. Speak of the station. Okay, so I had quite a few. I'm gonna go back up. Okay, so from John, our board member, he had a couple. How do astronauts eliminate their waste during training? And same question for the safety divers, since they appear to be in the wetsuits.
Good question. I'll start first with the astronauts. The astronauts have, and like we talked about, NASA loves acronyms. So we have the MAG, Maximum Absorbency Garment. And don't call it a diaper because it's a MAG. But essentially, it's actually not a diaper anymore. It's more like a pull-up, an adult pull-up. So if the crew inside, while they're in their training, and also while they're in space, this isn't just for the MBL, this is true NASA stuff when they're doing their spacewalks, they have a MAG, and so they'll relieve themselves there. For the dive team, they say the rule about divers, what is it? You either pee in your wetsuit or you're lying about it or something like that. Yes, so we don't get out unless it's, other ways, and of course we get out. But basically we stay down there for two hours on test days, and our single exposure on non-test days is 3 hours with an hour out, and then another 2 hours. So we have a maximum dive of 5 hours a day. With a 3 hour single exposure. So we just stay there. Good question.
Excellent. And he was also wondering, what's the deepest depth of the training dives at NBL? And can you explain the reasoning, the math for using 46% nitrox instead of, let's say, 40 or 50%?
That's a good question. And
oh, you froze up. Well, I know you'll come back.
to be honest, I don't know if I can go that. The
You
depth in which
actually,
we usually
believe it or
stay
not, you froze up before you even got to hear the answer.
Oh no.
You
All right,
get
am I
to
back?
respond again.
Okay, so the pool is 40 feet deep. The mock-ups are usually around 20 feet to 30 feet, give or take. It is very rare that we're on the pool floor. There are only some work sites in which we're at the pool floor. I don't know
Oh no.
all the NASA documents and figure that out, but I don't have the answer offhand, and I don't have those documents with me right now. But
We keep freezing, but I'm guessing you're saying that you don't have the reason for the equations is what my guess is.
correct.
Okay, perfect. Fair enough answer. Let me see what else. Oh, this is actually pretty good. What happens if you fall and how do you get up?
On the Lunar, I'm
They
assuming in the
didn't
lunar.
specify.
So in the MB or when they're on the space station side, they can't, if they fall, then the divers should be there. They shouldn't be falling because they should be neutral. And the divers have to catch them. But if they're on the lunar side and we're in the 16G, if they fall, we aren't going to the moon to catch them. So if they fall, they have to get themselves up because that they're going to be their only person to help them up, or their other crew members. So if they fall, yes, there's a safety hazard. There's things that, you know, we make sure they don't crack the visor or anything like that. But at that point, it's flight-like, it's real, and we have to let them get themselves up.
Okay.
Good question.
Jason was wondering, are there plans for lunar gateway components to be swapped out with ISS parts?
Oh.
I hope, and I hope that we are still training. I hope that the training continues on to Lunar Gateway for our facility.
Excellent. Dr. Sally was wondering, are core temperatures of the astronauts measured during dives? What about in actual spacewalks?
Not during dives, but on actual spacewalks, yes. They have their met rates. They have all of that. They have sensors hooked up. They can see their blood pressure. They can see everything. But in the pool, they don't. Good question.
And actually, I was wondering, so when you were talking about the displays, where do they see that? Where do you see that when you're in the suit? Does it show up on the faceplate? Do they have to look down onto that pack? How do they see it?
Good question. They're actually testing heads-up display. That was one of the tests that we did today. So they're working on getting heads-up displays in the future. But basically on the DCM, on the display and control module, there's a digital readout that's at the top that they can see down. But it is very challenging to read all of it. So you're having to look down over your tools. So what NASA actually did was write all the words backwards on it, and then gave the crew wrist mirrors on each side so that they can look and actually read it, because it'll be, you know, reversed in the mirror. So that's how they'll be able to see that.
That's pretty cool. And then my other question was, oh, here's one. Are tours / visits at NBL available?
Not right now. We're still in stage 2 of our COVID protocol. So we're not open to the public, and the people who work there cannot bring anybody in just yet. But hopefully we'll be picking up soon.
Excellent. And so I was actually wondering, so for you personally, how did you get into this field? Were you a diver first and then just happened upon this position, or were you involved in like NASA space stuff and you also happen to be a diver, or how did you come to be where you are?
Good question. I'll keep it brief. So I worked at NASA's Visitor Center, at Johnson Space Center's Visitor Center, which is unlike Kennedy, it's a nonprofit. So I was working there in their education department, and the program that I taught was rocketry, various aerospace engineering, robotics, things of that nature. And I was teaching them through this course, and my students would visit the NBL, and then they would, you know, learn about astronaut. Then they would go to a smaller pool, learn basic scuba skills, and kind of work in their teams underwater and build things out of PVC and things like this. So eventually I got acquainted with the person that ran that, and I was interested in diving but was not certified yet. So he allowed me to, you know, said, if you're interested, you know, come on, let's go. So he certified me, and shortly after my certification, I began walking the students through this underwater simulation. And so I did that from 19 to 25, so 2009 to 2015. And then 2015, I saw an opening at the NBL and applied, and I got in. So I've been knowing about space for a long time now, and I absolutely love it. It's my first love is the ocean. I wanted to be a marine biologist. That was my goal. And then the more I started talking about space with my students, that became my passion.
That's awesome. I did have another question. Do you have a medical response team on site, or do the safety divers have specialty emergency response training?
That's a really great question. We do have a medical response team. We have physicians that are trained in dive medicine. We also have our own hyperbaric chamber on site. So in the event that there were an issue with our divers or the subject, the astronauts, because they're also diving as well. So that's part of our job as safety divers, is to recognize if they have O2 toxicity or CO2 or anything, any kind of diving malady. We have to be able to recognize that in their behavior, in their face. So yes, we do have our own medical staff that is trained in hyperbarics, and that can, get us to the chamber if and when we need it.
Excellent, excellent. So I'll give another minute or two for anyone to send any questions. I'm going to pull up Lisa and them. So we'll go back to gallery view. Excellent. Welcome back, two of you.
These are some great questions. And it's nice to actually, we were talking about some of the questions and then somebody else asked them or we'd have it ready and then you'd cover it on the next slide. So very informative, very really appreciated it. And as a thank you, for the History of Diving Museum has little, we actually use the gym suit stamp on our bags, but we have a little goodie bag as a thank you. You're as a gift, a History of Diving Museum member, so you can come to the History of Diving Museum 362 days a year or next time you're on vacation. But our memberships go to support our educational outreach and our maintenance on our exhibits and just the museum on a whole. So thank you for being part of that community now and for visiting when you were in the Keys last time.
Yes, of course. It was the museum is incredible. For those if you haven't been, it was really awesome to see. The wall of the helmets, I was taken away by that. It was really neat to see, and it was so great meeting you and so great to be a part of this evening's event. And I look forward to working with you anytime. This is great.
Oh, definitely.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I've gotten some thank yous and everything, that everyone enjoyed the presentation so far. So I think that's pretty good. I haven't gotten any other questions yet. So I think it is time to say adieu and thank you so much, Lauren. This was great. I've learned a lot, and I'll use some of it hopefully in my space presentation I'm going to have to do.
Absolutely.
Good job.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. And next month, like Lisa said earlier, we will be discussing vintage diving with Terrence. So that should be great and everything. But we will see you guys next month. And thank you again, Lauren.
Of course. Thank you guys so much. And if anybody contacts you with any questions, please feel free to email me, and I will, field those questions and give you guys responses.
Perfect.
Whatever you guys need.
Excellent.
All right.
All right. So long, everyone. Have a good evening.
Awesome, y'all. Good night.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.